You know, it's hard enough to talk about movies and not give away any spoilers, like when I reviewed The Batman earlier this year, or later last year I talked about Spider-Man No Way Home. That was tough enough, but you know, at least with those, it was like 3 hours each that I was dealing with, about 3 hours close to. But oh my gosh, this new season of Stranger Things in total, maybe it was like 12 hours, at least 10, you know, because I think each episode is over an hour, and then there are some that are even longer and more towards feature film length. So yeah, I've just been contemplating that, approaching reviewing this new season here without giving away any spoilers of it, and just how much of a challenge that's going to be. So I will try my best. However, I do want to say that there might be some spoilers for seasons 1 through 3 in case you haven't seen those. They might slip out. I don't know. I'll try not to do that as well, but it might happen. And you know what? I'm actually might not try that hard because they've been out for a while. So yeah, with that said, let's get started. So Stranger Things Season 4 is finally all done now. The first 7 episodes, Volume 1, was released on May 27th. And then the last 2 being released just on July 1st recently. And I did watch the 7 episodes shortly after they came out. I thought I would just wait till it was all done, the whole season was released and ready to be watched and talked about, so I could talk about it in its entirety. And I'm glad I did, because not to necessarily get ahead of myself with my thoughts on this season overall, but there were elements of the 7th episode that did leave me a little bit disappointed when it ended. So I'm glad I waited until these last 2. But yeah, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I thought I would start this off by just talking about my experience with this show up to this point. I have been a fan of Stranger Things ever since the first season, really. I wasn't there right when it came out. I didn't jump onto the hype train that quickly, honestly. I did wait a little bit, but I did catch it, and I watched all of those 8 initial episodes before season 2 came out. So I was there relatively early, you know, I wasn't exactly late to the party. And I'm glad I did watch it as early as I did, because I do kind of still have a tendency, even nowadays, to kind of back off from shows or movies when there's a bunch of hype around them, and just kind of keep my distance for a little bit. But I'm glad I caught it still kind of early, because I've been super hyped for the premiere of each season now ever since that first season. And yeah, I mean, this has just easily been one of my favorite shows of the past several years. I've very much enjoyed every season, some more than others, of course, but this is, I still think, been a very consistently enjoyable batch of episodes to watch every couple years now that it comes out. And I'm really glad we got this 4th season, because I remember at the time of finishing the 3rd season, it almost felt like it was done to me. Like, I thought this could kind of be a suitable way to end the show and to close the curtains on it. And with this new season, I mean, oh my gosh, there's just so many things I could talk about. This, you know, you hear all of them say it, all of the cast saying in interviews with every new season, like, it's the biggest, craziest thing we've done. It's the most chaotic season of Stranger Things. But like, I genuinely do believe that with this new season, there's just a lot to dive into, a lot to interpret. So I thought I would start off with like some of the newer stuff in this season so far, to find some first initial talking points. There are really only a few new characters here, not as many as we've had in past seasons. But I was mostly pleased with them. The first one being Eddie, played by Joseph Quinn, who I was very hesitant about at first. He honestly kind of reminded me of Pauly Shore a little bit with his first introduction, which could be a good or bad thing, really, depending on your thoughts on Pauly Shore. But he ended up being a character that I liked quite a bit. He turned out to be much more smarter and clever, and once he found out everything that was going on with the Upside Down, and just with all the crap that is happening, he kind of became more straight-faced and took it more seriously. So I appreciated that about his character. He turned out to be a pleasant surprise to me in the season. I did also like Eduardo Franco as Argyle. He is Jonathan's new friend, I guess. And I mean, look, there's nothing really much unique or original about this character. He is just kind of another stoner guy that works at a pizza place. He's basically like Sean Penn in Fast Times, except he works at a pizza restaurant. That's not a direct comparison. Obviously, there are differences between those characters, but I mean, yeah, he is kind of the exact type of character you would think he would be just off of a description of his character. But I thought he played it well. He was entertaining. He was super charming. And then Jamie Bauer playing Henry Creel /1 Vecna. I don't want to say too much because like this is kind of where I could almost slip into spoiler territory here. But he was great as this character, or characters, however you want to interpret it. Vecna being the main villain, the main antagonist of this season. And he was really good. I wasn't in love with all aspects of this character though, especially as Henry Creel. But hats off to Jamie Bauer. I thought he did do an excellent job with his performance. And I was pleased with everyone else that returned in the season. All of the returning main cast. They're all really good. You know, I could go down the line, but just they're all good, they're all solid. However, if I am going to pick a standout or standouts, maybe, you know, everyone's talking about her performance in this season. It's true though, Sadie Sink really is great as Max Mayfield in this season. And I've liked her in the past as well, but I do think this season in particular, they really gave her character a lot more value, especially in the beginning, exploring just the aftermath of Billy's death and how much of an effect this had on her, because they kind of touched on that at the end of season 3. You know, she was there when he died. That was of course very emotional, very powerful. But then like the next scene, she was singing Neverending Story with Lucas, and it just seemed like she didn't really care or wasn't really affected by it at all. So I'm glad that they did touch on that more, because that was kind of a questionable direction they were going in with her character. But I'm glad, I was very satisfied that they touched on that here. And yeah, I mean, she has that big moment in episode 4. Everyone knows that by now, and it's incredible. I mean, it's an amazing scene. It's an amazing episode. What else do you want me to say? It's awesome. It's, yeah, easily one of the most memorable scenarios in the entire show. And another thing that I liked that they touched on with this season, that they kind of hinted at with season 3, was 11 losing her powers, which, and I know, by the way, that her name is Jane. I don't give a crap. I'm calling her 11. You know, it's like with Baby Yoda, all of a sudden his name is Grogu. Like, fuck that. It's Baby Yoda. Are you kidding me? Yeah, sorry, I just kind of had to get that out for a second. But I did like what they did with that, which I don't want to say too much about, though, because then other characters get involved and it's spoilers. So I'm just going to stop here. But I liked how they handled that. And I mean, yeah, of course, Millie Bobby Brown, once again, is fantastic as 11. If I am jumping into negatives with this season, which, you know, I have a few. This was not a perfect season. I did think there were some things wrong with it. In my mind, one of the biggest strengths of Stranger Things up to this point is the distribution of different subplots, different areas that characters are in. They're all sort of in a different situation, different stuff going on with where they are. And I think that the Duffers have always handled that very well, juggling all these different plots and showing just the right amount of screen time to each situation. But this season, I do think that there were a couple of subplots that they focused on a little too much. I would say the biggest one that stands out in this season is everything that goes on with Joyce and Murray and what they're trying to do. I just wasn't as interested in this as with what was happening with 11, or the sort of side quests that Mike and Will and Jonathan and Argyle were all on. And there are even a couple other characters that are introduced in this storyline involving Joyce and Murray that are played for more of a comic relief, and I was just not feeling that at all. I thought those characters were just not worth anything to the overall arc of this season. So that was a bit of a letdown, but beyond that, I would say I mainly just have some nitpicks with different things. If I'm just spewing out some of them right now, there's a time jump that occurs at one point in the season into the future, and this just felt a little bit awkward and abrupt to me based off of where everything was left off before this time jump. Also, I do think that the writing for some of the returning characters could have been better, particularly I would say Will and Jonathan. Surprisingly, even though I was interested in the storyline that they were involved in, those two characters had very little to contribute with this season, which is sad, honestly, because like Will was such a big part of season 2 and season 1, really. Jonathan as well. They were both, very important and very critical aspects to those first 2 seasons. So it was kind of disappointing to see how they were handled in this season. But yeah, I was much more pleased than disappointed with this season as a whole. I liked the way it concluded a lot, even though I will say the last actual 10 minutes were a little bit on the nose, a little bit cheeky. Still a very satisfying finale, and like nearly 2.5 hours long. So it was awesome just watching that and how epic it was. And I'm kind of hitting writer's block at this moment, so I'll just say that for me, this season 4 of Stranger Things gets an A-. And what's funny about that is that this is probably my least favorite season out of the whole show. And from what I've heard, that's a bit of an unpopular opinion. A lot of people seem to just be going nuts for this season. I keep hitting my door by accident. And it's great. It's great. I totally get why everyone loves this. I very much enjoyed it myself as well, obviously. But yeah, I mean, that just goes to show how good and how consistent the show has been, that even its worst season is still extremely enjoyable and extremely fun to watch. So yeah, this was, I thought, a very good penultimate season. Only one more season left to go. Season 5. Hopefully we don't have to wait 3 years. I'm thinking probably 2 years max, because obviously the pandemic did kind of interrupt the making of this season. So I could see it probably coming out within the next 2 years at least, probably. I know you guys have seen this show. I know you've seen this last season. So feel free to let me know what you think about it in the comments. Do you think it's a little bit more scarier and gorier than past seasons? I don't know if I would agree with the scary part, but gorier for sure. I mean, some of the imagery is pretty grotesque, pretty brutal. It's just brutal in certain parts. And it was awesome. I loved seeing that. All right, I think I'm done now. Thank you for watching. Peace out.